Welcome to the Office Latte podcast, where we go beyond the boardroom to explore new conversations on life and career. I'm Erin Kennedy, CEO of Professional Resume Services and wife, mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and friend. Now, let's dive in. Good morning, Summer. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Good morning. How are you doing?
I am fabulous. It's fall.
Yes.
It's officially fall. I almost had to run outside and cover up my my mom's because I think it got to like 34, so it wasn't quite freezing. But tonight it's going to be 31, so I have to cover them up. What are you drinking today?
Oh, just drinking my iced coffee in our merch and our cup, Office Latte. I love this mug. It's so
Look at how
cute.
cute that is. Look at how cute that is. Awesome. Well, I already drank. I'm 3 hours ahead of you.
Yeah.
I already had a couple cups of coffee. So you know what I've been hooked on is Cameron's coffee. Oh my gosh.
What's that?
And it's pretty inexpensive. It's like $8 for either a bag or $8 for, a 12 pack of K-Cups. And it is so good. They have this one called a winter blend that is just amazing. So I had some this morning. It's kind of what I've been drinking lately. I did have my husband did bring me home a Tim Hortons yesterday, which is always, I'm always grateful for that. But
what's your order at Tim
anyways,
Hortons?
I just get a black coffee.
Oh.
And then I'll put like some cream in there, maybe, or a little bit of like Truvia or something, but usually just black.
Yeah. Nice.
Nothing fancy. That. Yeah. I went to this place. Actually, somebody local interviewed me. Not yesterday, Monday. What is today? Wednesday, Monday. And interviewed me at this place called the Doghouse Coffee Shop in our little downtown area. It's super cute. It's really big, but I got a coffee with, I think, like skinny version caramel or something. It was amazing.
Okay, yum. Yeah.
Not to be skinny at all. It's so good. Yeah. I'm glad that I would have to drive there because I would be drinking them every day. Anyways, enough coffee chat.
Yeah. No, we can always talk about coffee. That's the backbone to this podcast is our coffee.
It really is.
It really is.
Our obsession with coffee. So, anyways, I went to that conference last week, National Resume Writers Association. It was so much fun. We were in Providence, Rhode Island. I've never been there. It was beautiful. Had a couple different excursions, walked around their downtown, and it was beautiful. So great job NRWA and Providence. We love you. It was pretty fun. Learned a lot and all that good stuff.
And it's all resume writers or is it career coaches and
there's career coaches as well. Yeah.
That's cool.
But it's resume writers and career coaches. And so we got to just get together and it's nice because they have you can choose from 2 sessions every couple of hours. And just kind of, choose what you want to learn about. And so, and then, networking like crazy and seeing the people that I've been talking to, on LinkedIn or online or in our little groups for the last year. So it's so much fun.
That's really cool.
I just love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can finally put not a face to a name because you already obviously know what they look like, but really getting to meet all the people that you chat with all the time is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So that was nice. And I was just going to say one last thing. There were a couple people, their flights got canceled. Some had to go home early because of the hurricanes.
Oh yeah.
So that Hurricane Milton was last weekend or last week. So that was kind of nuts. But anyways, everybody was okay. Everybody got home safe. Good. So that was good.
Yeah, I know. Literally thoughts for all the people in Florida. And I know this will go out a few weeks from now, so it'll be long gone, but I'm hoping even by the time this goes out that recovery efforts are in motion and they're hopefully now getting back to maybe some normalcy or something because those back-to-back hurricanes were just awful that.
Oh, just terrible. Bad. Just horrific watching it on the news. I just was praying and praying. I also have a sister who lives there, but she said actually, because it was kind of going towards her way and then it sort of turned. Yeah. So she was glad about that. She said it was just like a windy day and that was it. But she said she had been, shopping and kind of planning. And she said, now I have all this food I have to eat. So anyways, but I wanted to talk about today's guest. I'm very excited about it. Jena Dunay. I've known her for probably a couple of years on LinkedIn. And I'll just read her bio.
Okay.
She's the founder of Recruit the Employer, which is an outplacement and career development firm. She started her career on Wall Street, working in investment banking and at the New York Stock Exchange. From there, she spent over 9 years in the learning and development space in a variety of roles, from trainer to chief learning officer at a variety of organizations. She has over 42,000 followers on LinkedIn. She's a LinkedIn learning instructor with, I think, like 167,000 learners. And she's been featured on Business Insider, Forbes, Bulletin, The Skim, and The Muse. She is passionate about faith at work, foster care, building families with the same intentionality that you would a business. So that's what this is going to be about today. I'm really interested and excited in this because, she talks about building a family like you would, or strategically, like you would a job search. So I was like, what? Because I didn't think about that at all when I was building a family. But anyways, for fun, she said she's an amateur baker. Me too. Ooh. A world-class pickleball loser. and an occasional needlepointer. I was in a needlepoint for a while. I was really into that. But anyways, so I'm excited to hear what she has to say, especially about, intentionally the way you build your family. Yeah. Exciting. So without further ado, well, hi, Jena. I am so happy that you are here today talking with me, and we've got lots of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I love that we were internet friends for a really long time. And now we still haven't met in real life. We are more not just afar internet friends. We're actual Zoom internet friends.
We're Zoom internet friends. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I mean, the good thing about, having a home-based business is that you can have a lot of different friends, but they're usually Zoom friends. But
yes, it's true. It's true. We're going to have to do a meetup with everybody.
No, that would be fun. And so just kind of what got you started here, especially if, you were on Wall Street for a while. I mean, how did you end up here?
Yeah. So I started out my career on Wall Street and realized quite quickly that lifestyle was not for me. It was like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? And made a move where I actually pivoted into a startup. And it was kind of there where I got into the HR talent career coaching space, and got familiarized with that. And out of that experience, I launched a career coaching practice. I did that for a handful of years, and ended up becoming the chief learning officer actually internally at a wealth management firm. Loved working there for about 2.5 years. But actually while I was there, it was super fascinating. So the work that I got to do that's relevant to kind of what we're talking about today is I would meet with families of generational wealth. So maybe they were a family that built a business and they sold that business. And now they're like, how do I not screw up my kids with money? That's basically the question that they were asking in a much nicer way. And so, right? Okay. So then I was helping to solve for that for families and really diving deep into parenting and strategic family planning and all of these things that these wealthy families were talking to in the midst of actually starting to build my own family. And realizing a lot of the principles that I was learning and kind of shepherding other families along with, helping them with conflict resolution, all those like really heavy things actually that goes with families and especially families of wealth. I was like, this is really relevant to my family, which made me realize I wanted to go back out on my own and relaunch a business. So we're not talking about my business right now, but we're talking about family planning. But I think that background is really helpful. And I'm now again in the kind of career coaching space where I'm predominantly focused on outplacement. So when companies are going through layoffs, they'll hire us to help facilitate and shepherd those people through that layoff process to help them get back up on their feet and have a softer landing.
Right. Love that. And at some point, I think we're going to have a talk about these wealthy families and what they fight about.
I can't give you names, but I can give you stories.
I love stories. I know. I'm thinking of, some shows that I follow that I'm like, ooh.
It is not quite Succession. I will tell you that. People always ask, is it like Succession? No, it's not that bad. But there are some instances where you have a lot of the emotions obviously are dramatized on that show, but there are a lot of the same emotions that families on a much smaller scale and less dramatic, murderous scale, I guess you could say, right? Yeah. You don't have that.
One season of that. And I was thinking of Yellowstone.
So stressful.
A lot of that stuff. Too.
Yes, right. Yeah, it's way too stressful. It's not that stressful, I promise. It is. There are moments, but it's not that stressful.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, the lives of the wealthy and the infighting.
Yes.
But okay, so you learned a lot in that role, and it
Yeah.
got you thinking even before you were married and have kids.
Yeah.
About what you wanted to do and how you wanted to create your family. And I like what you said when you and I were emailing and talking about it. And you said, I think of it how we coach people to have a job search, have an intentional job
Yes.
search, have an intentional, strategic job search. That's how it should be with families. So tell me more. Because I was thinking, honestly, I was like, okay, well, I've been married 27 years, and I mean, we just got married, and we had nothing planned out. We just had kids, but maybe a game plan would have, I don't know, been a better idea. I don't know. So tell me more about this.
Well, it's really fascinating, right? Because we spend a lot of time, like, let's say we're starting a business, or let's say we're, thinking about switching jobs. We spend a lot of time really being intentional and proactive with understanding what do we want? What do we care about? What's the end goal? What's our vision? What's our mission? What's our core values? Like all those different things. And we recommend, when I was doing career coaching and even in our outplacement program, we have people uncover what their core values are. Right. So with the most important thing in your life, which is not your career, for the record, it is your family. And especially if you're a parent, it's your children. Why are we not using the same intentionality in that area of life that we are in business and our professional life, right? And so it just kind of got me thinking. And again, this was all of a product of being a part of the organization that I was a part of. It was like I got a crash course before I had a child, and so I had some benefits along that line. But if this is our most important work that we're probably going to do in our life, alongside the professional work that we get to do and get the opportunity to do, why are we not thinking intentionally about and planning to some degree, right? Life happens. You can't plan everything. Just like you can't plan perfectly for a business or your career, you can't plan perfectly for your life. But there are some things that we can put into place to create rhythms in families, to think about intentionally, what is my end goal for my family? Like that simple question feels like an absurd question to ask, but it's a really important question. Why are you having a family? What's the goal of having a family? Is it just to procreate? Maybe, maybe not, right? So we just need to be thinking intentionally about some of these questions. And when my husband and I actually got the opportunity to do some of this kind of deep work together before we had our child, and I want to say that it is relevant for any family, whether you are have newbies, we're like newbies, like my husband and I, or you have teenagers, or you have kids that are outside of the house and you're thinking about maybe eventually becoming a grandparent, or, even if it's just you and your spouse in marriage, right? The strategic family planning is relevant for all of those different types of seasons.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more. So, you said you approached your husband with this and you guys sat down. This is before you had your child.
Yeah.
And so what sorts of things do you cover? I mean, what, do you, tell me more. I'm still.
Yeah. You're like, how does this work? Okay. Yeah. So one of the first things that I would recommend if a family is like, okay, I'm intrigued. Yes. I want to be more intentional with my family as I have been with my career or my business or whatever that may look like. What's my first step? So the first thing that I recommend is, particularly if you have a partner or a spouse, is to set up like a date. And you can do this with yourself if you're just a single, parent or whatever, but set up a date to have with your spouse. And my husband and I went to like a coffee shop and I pulled out a piece of paper and I had a couple questions on it. And, he's kind of giggling here, like, but he played along, right? So he was like willing to play along, but he sounded super, he knows me and loves me. And he knows that like, this is important work and he probably will value it after it's done. And so one of the first things that we started talking about is like, what's our goal for our family? And that may seem like a silly question, but when we started thinking about it, a lot of the things that started coming up for us were, hey, when our kids are older and out of the house, we want them to want to come back home. Okay, so let's back into that. How do we create an environment right now for our kids to want to come back home? Okay, that was one thing that we started to realize was important for us.
Yeah.
Another thing we started to realize was, well, we want to make sure we have a strong marriage throughout this entire process. What do we need to start doing to put into place in order to create an environment, again, reverse engineering some of this. If that's our end goal, that we want to be married 50 years from now, what do we have to be doing now in order to make sure that that's happening?
Mhm.
And then ultimately, if our job as parents is to steward that responsibility of being that kid's parent for X amount of years, and then to equip them in such a way to send them off into the world to make good choices, what do we need to teach our kids, right? Like that is a really big question that I feel like a lot, especially becoming a mom, I didn't really think about it before of like, what are the things that I want my daughter to know before
Right.
she turns 18? I have a little bit of benefit of time right now because she's only under 2 and I have another one on the way. And so I'm really in the midst of really thinking about what are some of those questions. So the first question is, what's the goal of your family?
Right.
Why do you have a family? I don't know. What about you, Erin? When you start to think about that, like, what's a good question? What comes to your mind when I said that?
I know. I am thinking. I'm thinking. Well, I don't know. Actually, when I got married, I mean, it was 100 years ago, and
It's not 100 years ago.
no. Honestly, I just kind of followed my sister's footsteps. I mean,
Yeah.
we were always close. I always looked up to them, and they had gotten married young. I mean, I was, 27 when I got married, so I was much young. I was much older than they were. But, I don't know. I think I thought more about being married than I actually thought about having kids. And I mean, I knew I always wanted kids, but I guess I thought more about, I like the idea of marriage, that you have somebody who is like your partner and
Totally.
by your side. And luckily, found the best one for me. And so I didn't really have a plan. It was more, I mean, my parents got married when they were 20, I mean, they
Yeah,
were married
sure.
until they passed. And so we just, I don't know, we didn't have a plan. It was just kind of going along. But
Yeah.
but thinking back, I mean, we did have times where before we had kids, because it was a few years. It took me a while to have kids.
Yeah.
Body just wasn't working. But so we did talk about it, like, how many kids do we want? Which I think is so important. Get that out of the way before you
Sure.
get married.
Exactly.
Yeah, we both knew we wanted kids.
That's what I call practical family planning. Like,
Yeah.
how many kids do you want to have? And like, are we making things appropriate so that we can have maybe those kids?
Yeah. Well, my oldest sister had 6 kids. She, she's always like, you can't worry about if you're financially set or any of that stuff. Just have them. And so,
Yeah.
and she had 6 wonderful kids, and my other sister had 3 wonderful kids. So I kind of really just followed them, and what they did. And I knew, like you, that I wanted to be that soft place to land. I wanted my kids to always want to come back, just like we always wanted to go back, see my mom, see my dad. So, I mean, that was pretty much it. My husband, we came from very similar families as far as same morals and values, same, married forever until they pass. I mean, really. So I don't know. We didn't really have a plan. It was just, I don't know, being together and then, having kids. But, we did talk about, how many kids do we want, and, kind of schools do we want to send them to, what kind of, what do we want to focus on? And so anyways, that was pretty much it. The rest
and that's what I call those are the practical things, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of couples talk about those practical things of, hey, what were our families like growing up? What do we want to do? Somebody had told me this phrase, which I love this phrase, and it was in our premarital counseling. The pastor said this to us. He said, what do you want to repeat about what your parents did? And what do you want to redeem about what your parents did? Giving space for like, hey, they did a lot of things right, but here's some things that I'd probably like to do differently. Yeah. And that, I think a lot of couples talk about that as it relates to schooling, as it relates to more of those more head related things, but I'm talking about the heart related things.
Oh yeah. Like and changing the things that you didn't like. And there are some things that I did change,
for sure.
That I made a conscious effort to change, but other things that I made a conscious effort to be just like,
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And so in that questioning, my husband and I, we started to develop our own family. You know how like back in the old days, like old days, we're talking about medieval times, not you, medieval times. We're talking about centuries ago.
Yeah.
And people would have coat of arms, right? They would have like these real, like the family unit was such a thing of pride. It was such, and so it's kind of how do we bring some of that into the modern day? And so beyond asking the question, like, what's our goal? And then starting to reverse engineer that thing, we started to talk about what is our family's mission statement. like you would for an organization. And then we started to uncover, okay, what's,
okay.
yes. And then what we started asking the question of, what are our family's core values? Like we would for an organization. What are our family's core values that we want to, that can help be a guiding light, especially as our kids are growing up and starting to make choices on their own? What are some of the things that we want to instill in them now that we hope that they pass down to the next generation? Okay. And so we're thinking like 100 years from now. I'm not thinking just my own immediate clan. I'm thinking about the tentacles that my grandchildren and great grandchildren will have. And people might say, that's nuts, Jena. Why even bother? But the reality is that we can help create change in our own families today and start being intentional about that. So we started coming up with kind of a mission statement. And for our family, we're people of Christian faith. And so one of the first things that we said was we want to love Jesus and look out for each other. That's our mission statement. Those are our two things that if we do that as a family together, as a unit, look out for each other and love Jesus, we're going to be doing well. And we want to instill that in our children. The second thing was for us, we had actually a lot of fun coming up with the core values. So I actually have a long list of like different values. I've done these values workshops with a bunch of different families before where we get a bunch of people in the room. We start talking about, okay, what are the different core values for your family that seem to come to mind? And what is so interesting is that families will start to actually say a lot of the same things, which is a good sign, right? It's a good sign if families start to say similar core values. And for my husband and I, we came up with, again, this is all on this date that we had, and we kind of sat on it for a little bit. And we said the 4 core values that we had for our immediate family that we want to start talking to our kids about even now is humor, integrity, generosity, and hospitality. Those were the 4 for us that we felt like were most important. And we wanted to have stories attached to that. Isn't it so fun though? But
really
so so it allows you to, as your kids start to get older, is to start to have those conversations around the table, right? So around, hey, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this Thanksgiving drive? Well, generosity is one of our core values of our family. Or why do you guys give? Why do I have to give 10% of my babysitting income away? Well, generosity is a part of our family structure. That's our DNA as family members. It helps. For us, we found it was really important to even think about the money habits that could, delve into. So it's about just being intentional. You have these core values probably in the back of your brain, but it's about physically writing them down. Some things that I would do for families is I would actually put it on a tea towel and have it in the kitchen so that the core values would be always around. So if a parent had an issue kind of like having a conversation with a kid, they got in trouble at school, hey, you cheated on that test. One of our family values is integrity. We need to talk about that, what integrity actually means. And so it's just, I'm thinking, what about when my daughter's a teenager? Again, people might think I'm crazy because they're like, you have a 2-year-old.
No. And I know, I'm listening to what you're saying, and mine are 18 and 21.
Yes. Right.
And
it goes by quickly.
It does. And what we've taught them, and, they went to a Catholic school. I mean, they had a lot of, Christian kind of drilled into them for a while. On a daily basis, and how, they ended up going into public school because it ended in 8th grade, and how a lot of that changed. And I mean, they still have the basic core values, but, they're older now, and now they're kind of like, I'm going to decide what I want to do, and I'm going to decide what,
Sure.
Luckily, for the most part, it's how we raise them, but it is interesting when you watch them age and they become their own people,
Yes.
And, what do they say? Like, in teaching them to do the good thing, even if nobody's watching.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm just, you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about my own, who are so much older, and thinking, God, did we do all those things? I don't know. I don't even know that I did at home.
And I always like to tell parents, like, it's not that you don't have to feel guilt if your kids, again, are older and you're starting to do this process now. It's never too late to start having these conversations and again, it's just bringing to light and writing down the things that are probably already percolating in your family's culture, because every family has a culture, right? And it's just your job to pull out the things that you hope that you are. And then I always say, I recommend, don't just pick things that are aspirational for your family, because then it's going to feel unattainable. So, and it's also a good metric to see for yourself. Like, for instance, my husband and I, generosity was one of our things. And we, quite frankly, were not being as generous as we had intended with that word being one of our core values. And so it was a wake-up call for us to be like, if we want our children to be generous in the future, we believe that's
Yeah.
an important family value, and we are not modeling it as parents, we need to step up. And so we started that process.
I'm getting my list and I'm
Yeah, right? So the modeling piece, I think, as a
For real.
parent is
Yeah.
so important. So with that, as we developed, again, that mission statement, we developed those core values for our family. Then we started to get really honest with ourselves on our own separate time about what are some areas that we need to be working on individually so that we could be good modeling parents for our children.
Right.
Because their kid isn't going to just listen to me, they're going to watch me.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know? And so
true.
we've seen that. I've gotten the privilege of, again, getting to sit amongst families particularly of wealth, that have everything at their fingertips. And I've seen it go well and I've seen it go bad.
Yeah.
And the way that it goes well is when the parents are incredibly intentional about modeling the behaviors despite the wealth that they have for their children.
Yeah.
And so that means, we can talk about it from the financial standpoint, but even just from the ethical standpoint, the value standpoint, they modeled the things that they wanted their kids. They took the time, even though they're building the successful business, to invest back into their family culture, even though it took away from their business or their career. And I think that's such an important life lesson that I got to experience and learn from watching people.
Yeah, I love that. One family that I always thought was amazing just because of how their kids seem to turn out. I mean, I don't know them, but are Bill and Melinda Gates, and how they have everything, but their kids all went to college. They all, are doing things that aren't, because, you see a lot of these celebrity families and they're just kind of living off the family money and they aren't really doing anything for themselves. And, the parents are really robbing them of, robbing their children of that satisfaction that they will get from doing something. Even my kids have said, like there's this kid in my youngest, he just graduated this past year, and he said, oh, so-and-so, he just gets everything. He just got a brand new, whatever it was, some car, and a brand new car. And I mean, he just gets it. And I said, well, then I said, that's how they are and whatever. And I said, but because I had to save and save and save for my first car.
Sure.
And I said, the fun part is saving for it and dreaming about it and wanting it. And both my kids agree. I mean, they've always had to save for what they wanted, and they both agree. It's so much better when you plan for it and save for it, and, versus just being given it, whatever it is. But I think that is something that we try to instill in them too, is, I don't know, just enjoying what you're working for,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask you, so do you have a certification of this, or are you?
No, there's no certifications on this, which is so fascinating.
No, I mean, I didn't know. It sounds like you're talking to families. I don't know if you're talking to other families or anything like that, like right now, and if you needed some sort of training in it, or, just what you learned.
Yeah, a lot of it, no, there was no certification program. It's actually kind of a newer field within the wealth management space in general. Obviously, there's some people that have like a therapy background and whatnot, but for me in particular, it was really having the coaching background that made me a good fit, and just knowing how to handle conflict, which there's a lot of conflict with families, right? And just having a lot of professional development and leadership development, past experience. It was relevant for these families and what they were trying to equip the next generation to do. But like I said, I got to experience even the CEO of our company and seeing the family makeup that he was able to create, and his intentionality when his kids were itty bitty, all the way to raising them. They have their fourth one now out of the house. Those kids love being around each other. They love being around their parents. They respect their parents. They're doing great things in the world. And I'm like, how do I do that?
Right.
And so a lot of this is from kind of his methodologies.
All right. So on that note, how does a parent get their kid to want to be around them?
Yeah, I think at time.
He did or taught you or whatever, time with them.
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest thing that I have seen is the time piece. And I would say not just like sitting on the couch. I mean, sometimes sitting on the couch and watching television is quality time, depending on your kid. It's getting to understand, it's getting to understand yourself and heal your own stuff. One.
For sure. Yeah.
That you're able to model the behavior and not just talk the talk, but you can walk the walk, so they trust you. Mm-hmm. It's spending quality time with your family and routinely planning it. So one of the things that as our daughter gets older and we have more children, one of the things that my husband and I have talked about is having like a Sunday family meeting. And you can pick whatever day it is or whatever works for your schedule. And this is honestly mirroring off of what he had done with his family, where every week they would have their family dinner. They'd make it special. They'd do something fun afterwards, and they'd maybe do a craft or whatever. And they would they bring out their piece of paper that they would talk through their mission statement. They'd talk through their core values. And then they would have a question of, hey, how did you see this happen this week? And so even the little ones are learning from the big ones, and the big ones are learning from the little ones. And so we will start adopting that when our daughter's probably around 5. We're going to start doing that. And so it's having that intentional family time that we are gathering together in a rhythm, in a routine. Our kids know, and they're getting told really positive messaging and values-based learning together as a family. And so that's the first thing. And then I would say the other thing that they adopted that they did that I really loved is they would, before the kids became teenagers, because obviously this got a little bit harder, is like Friday night, the kids got to pick where they went out to eat. And they just like created these fun traditions and rituals within the family that created that space for them to connect with their parents. And so I think it's really simple, but hard to actually put into practice because our life gets busy, kids' extracurriculars get busy, all of those pieces, but it's really around the 2-part, the double whammy, if you will, of are you dealing with your own crap so that you can model it well so that your kids trust you and believe you when you say the things that you say and your vulnerability and that. And then at the same time, are you putting in the time and effort it takes and requires to build the relationship? I think both things, if you do those things really well, can be super fascinating. Another thing that I learned from this team, and this isn't their method. This was actually from a Christian-based organization, but it's relevant to if you are a believer or not believer. There's kind of 4 stages of parenting. And the first 5 years of parenting is all about being a caretaker, right? My daughter can't really do anything for herself. I have to do a lot for her. So 0 to 5, it's like, don't let your child die. That's really it. The parenting,
especially when the house is quiet, it's bad.
That's it, right? Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And then about 5 to about 12, you're in the stage where you're the cop, right? So you're acting like a cop. The problem is most parents, and you might be thinking of your own parents in this situation, cannot graduate from cop to the next season of life, which is coach. And those roles look very different. So if you're a cop, don't do this, that's cop 6. But as soon as they hit that preteen to about 18 years old, your job is to coach them on their decisions based off of the family values.
Yeah.
And then 18 and on, you're a consultant. And note with a consultant, you have to be asked for permission to give advice when you're a consultant. You just don't give advice. And so that's the other piece, right? And
they're not really listening unless they want to listen.
Yes. And so I think even just having that framework in my back pocket has been helpful as I think about raising my daughter. Hey, these first 5 years, don't die. Those next 6 years or so, that's all about don't do this, do this. Once they get into those teen years, you have to coach them through it and let them make their own choices, but through the lens of the values. And then 18 and beyond, it is all about them asking you for advice and being that person that they want to call home to. So it's all related to kind of what we were talking about.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So again, I'm just kind of lost in my own thoughts here. And I think it's interesting. I was thinking about, going from coach to consultant. It seems like, I don't know. I'm thinking of other parents that I knew, back when we were all raising our kids and the ones that, ended up with kids that are still close to them. And although today, I mean, this is kind of jumping, but it's a whole different world where kids aren't leaving the house like they used to. I mean, when I was growing up, it was kind of like a given. Okay, you're out at 18.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. So, but in today's world, it's a little different. So I'm wondering, with, your, coaching and advice, what it looks like now for these children that are, some come back to the nest, they finish college and it's tough out there, or the ones like mine who are going to community college for 2 years and then transferring. So, I wonder if it's just consultant after 18 forever or what. I know there was a point when I was probably around, I was always super close to my mom. But I remember probably in my early 20s is when I thought, oh, okay, she was right. She was was right all those times, and I see my oldest doing that every now and then. He'll be like, oh yeah, you were so right about this and this.
Yeah.
And this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if at some point after consultant, if it turns to, I don't know necessarily friend, but maybe a little more like, I don't know. You're always the parent, but so what comes after consultant? What, when you have a kid in their 20s and 30s?
Yeah, I think that really it is staying in that consultant role. If I think about my dad, right, and I really respect my dad and a lot of the advice that he gives, he's run his own business. And so he won't give it to me unless I ask for it. And that bodes better for our relationship still in my 30s. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think there is just like a constant evolution of that. And again, I don't have kids of that age, so I can't really speak to that, but
he's smart. He's smart. He's not handing it off until you're asking.
Until I'm asking, really. And he's like, do you want my opinion on this? I'm like, no, I don't actually. I just wanted to vent. But now I do want your opinion. Give me a couple of days and I might want your opinion now. Right. So it's really about, again, it comes back to that intentionality is for me, if I think about, okay, my daughter is going to be turning 2. That means technically if we're doing that 18-year-old, I only have 16 more years with her. That's crazy for me because I only have a toddler. And I'm not trying to skip ahead and be like, oh, I need to think about 18 and she's already grown up. No, but I want to reverse engineer it in such a way that I am being really intentional and not just flying by the seat of my pants and not just like willy-nilly going about this when this is my most important job is to shepherd this child well. Yeah. And to take real ownership and responsibility for this little soul that I can't protect her from everything. I can't like overtrain. I can't do all the things, right? Yeah. We as parents can't do all the things. We will do things that will totally mess up, right? But there are some things that we can put into place to create a family culture that's really intentional and that I believe, and from what I've seen of just working again with generational families that have dividends of benefits from generation to generation. I had one family that I'm working with or had worked with when I worked at the organization, and they were on generation 5. And that family, all 100 plus people would gathers for Easter and Christmas. Still. And that is because of the legacy of the great-great-grandparents, depending on what generation these people are in, the original kind of matriarch and patriarch, the values that they instilled in those children and those children instilled in those children. And there is a thread throughout the generations that has kept that going, and that regular, to the point that I said earlier, rhythm that you're having with your family can make such a world of difference in building those relationships across family lines.
So you say you learned this while working there. So did you notice that all these same successful families had these things in common? Is that what kind of made you sit down and like, did you just write it out or think, okay, this is what I'm noticing these successful families are doing? Or was there because then you said that that company is now incorporating this type of thing into work. And so is it something that they have written down, something that they're handing out, or like as a blueprint of family life, or how does that work?
Yeah. So, it's definitely something that I was observant. No. So like the organization specifically works with these wealthy families and they do have some resources for their families that are a part of their ecosystem that's more poignant to them, right? Because for wealthy families, they have to worry about things that me as the average person who has a regular 401k, right, and hoping to build wealth for my family, it looks much different than somebody who has $20 million plus dollars or $50 million or $1 billion for their family. Like the responsibility looks different. There are some very real tangible things that those next generation have to learn about trusts and finances that I don't ever probably have to learn. Maybe I'll have to learn. Who knows? My kids probably won't have to learn, but so, anyways, all that to say, it was a lot of the observing of like the families that stayed together. And I would say in this instance of successful versus not successful families, I would say the families, when I say successful, I'm thinking not necessarily of like financial wealth. I'm thinking predominantly of, hey, how have they stayed together over generations? And that's true of not just the wealthy families, but even families I'm friends with, right? Like, how did you get it so that your kids want to come back home? How did you get, those are the questions that I'm asking about. And the other thing that as I'm backing into it is I'm starting to take stock and to write down things that I want to almost to create like a manual for my child when she turns 18. Now, again, people are going to say that's crazy, but I'm like, why not? Why would I not create a family manual if I am creating all these processes for my business and all these, right? Why would I not?
Yeah. Now, are you still, did you still, after you turned 18, go back to your parents' house?
I did. But I will say that it was harder for me for a variety of reasons. And I won't get into that publicly, obviously, but yeah, I would say that I chose to move away, and I do like to come back for occasions, but I feel like my home is here in Nashville and here with my life here.
Well, I was wondering if that was some of the drive, what made you decide to put this in place and be intentional, you know?
Yeah, I think so. And like, here's the deal. My parents did a great job. I feel like I had great values growing up. My parents did a phenomenal job with the information that they had. I have the benefit of being, because of the sacrifices that they made, to be in a different position, to be around other types of people, to learn different things, and then put that in place for my family. And so, I don't think of it necessarily as they did a bad job and I'm trying to do the opposite of them, but it's more, that's not it at all. It's more that like, okay, I've now learned these things and I'm just trying to be more intentional and think ahead, where most parents don't have time, because you're like, I'm raising a kid. How do I have time to do this?
It wasn't a thing. I always, whenever I'm talking to other people and I'm like, yeah, I was raised in the 70s. Everybody's like, oh, okay. You know, we didn't have curfews. Right. I mean, it was come home when it's dark. It was a totally different. And, you know, the reason I kind of asked that with you is because it was different generations. I mean, I look at the way my husband parents versus how his dad was,
sure,
you know, night and day. And I think every generation, plus he was born much, much later than, you know, so his parents were older when he was born, but, and I just think generationally it changes.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Involvement changes, and the way that we're being, you know, that we're raising our children changes. It's changed from when I raised mine when they were little. You know, I see how my nieces and my nephews raise their kids. And so, which is much more thoughtfully, not that I wasn't thoughtful, but they're definitely more intentional. You know, I see that now, like with how they raise their kids. And I think, you know, it's interesting.
It's more that intentional piece that I'm just trying to bring to the forefront. And it's an interesting conversation because no one really talks about it.
Yeah. I love the idea of having a family mission statement and having, you know, your core values. I love that. That those, your kids will always, you know, I just love that. I love it.
And we want to repeat it for them. And we hope that they adopt some of the things like, and it's not to say that there's not opportunity to wrestle with some of that, especially you were talking about the faith piece of it. Like we have space for all of that. But these four are we want you to have fun in our family. Humor is important. Like we want you to be integrous. That's important for every single human. And it's really important for our family. We want you to be generous because we believe it's important for the world. And we want to be a hospitable home. And so we'll always have people open in our home. And there's things and lessons that we want you to learn from that. And so those are the things that are the real tenets of our family. And if we're doing that in a proper rhythm, we believe that our kids will also be able to adopt those values that nobody could say are bad things.
Wow. This is all amazing. You know, so to a listener, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I mean, I want to write down our family missions.
Yes.
Even though they're older. But so, would somebody reach out to you? Do you like do this on the side?
No, I don't do it on the side. It's just something I'm passionate to talking about. So
I mean, really, it would, you know, it's just a nice way, a great path to put your family on, I think.
Yeah.
You know, to keep, you know, to raise them how you want to raise them, how you want your family to be.
Yeah. I don't have anything right now, but on LinkedIn, I'm going to be posting more about the family aspect of building a business and building a family. Building both at the same time. And what does that look like? And with the same intentionality that I would my business, how do I build my family? And so there may be some freebies in the future that's like, hey, this is how my family's family planning. This is how we're thinking about how we revisit these things. Right. And so the other last piece of it that I think might be very practical for families is like, once you figure out your mission statement and you figure out your core values, what are like family goals that you have? And this was another thing that my old CEO did with his family. This was the regular rhythm. On a yearly basis, his kids would have a set of goals in different buckets that they had to create for themselves. And the parents would help them, depending on their age, help them facilitate in doing those goals. And they would check in throughout the course of the year to see how those goals were going. So there's kind of 4 buckets that we do for my husband and I, if that would be helpful for kind of the audience. Is one is around the spiritual side. And so that for you could be, purpose, right?
Right.
Financial goals, relational goals, and like physical goals, meaning like, how am I taking care of my body? And so if you put it in those 4 buckets, it just allows you to create goals that are simple, not overwhelming. Don't create too many. It's a new way to look at perhaps New Year's resolutions, but to be doing it together as a family unit. There's something really powerful about siblings helping siblings and husband helping wife and all those different pieces, right?
Yeah.
And then also within those 4 buckets, as I'm thinking about this handbook for my child or for my children in the future, I'm thinking about those 4 different buckets of what are the lessons that I want to teach my kids in each one of those buckets. So for me, from the spiritual standpoint, what do I want them to know about my personal faith story? What do I want them to know about dad's personal faith story? What are the things that are the tenets that we believe as a family and here's how to wrestle with those questions. For the financial, it's like, here's the things that we hope that you learned that I wish my parents taught me, but they didn't know any better. So they didn't teach around the financial pieces. There's a really great book that I do want to make an aside for anybody that's listening that is curious about how to raise children that are financially literate. This book is phenomenal.
Okay.
It's called Raising Financially Fit Kids. It is the best book on the market. They give you practical activities to do with your kid depending on their age. And so it goes from like 0, 5-ish to about all the way to, they're about to be in their 20s. And like the things that you can do with your kids to make them financially literate. It teaches them so many other life skills in the process, but that is a really great book. And so those are some of the things that I'm thinking about for my handbook for my kid. Right. The relational piece, like how do you, right? And then relational pieces, like how do you handle conflict? How do you handle like, here's a story about mom. Like stories, I think, are really important to be passed down as heirlooms for families. And that's going to be a part of
learn from stories.
Yeah. Exactly. And the last piece is physical. Like, how do we make sure we're also taking care of our body? And that's important to our family. So anyways, that's a lot of information, but I think it really helps people put a framework around what does it look like to be intentional and family plan in the same way that I would my career.
Yeah. I love it. I've never thought of any of this. I mean, as far as like a roadmap, we always kind of had some, a way that we wanted our kids to hopefully live their lives.
Yeah.
And, being good people and being generous and those types of things. But I love the whole point of like writing it down and having a guidebook for your kids. I mean, that's amazing. It's just going to help them so much.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this was amazing. And yeah, I haven't heard anything like it. You definitely need to.
And you're like, I didn't know that you had this in you, Jena, this whole other side. You were just the resume girl, the career girl. And
career girl. Yeah. I mean, I love this. You should, you definitely should do something like this. All right. Okay. So what if somebody would like some coaching? Are you going to offer that, do you think? I mean, if our listeners would like some sort of coaching, I mean, more on this than, 45 minutes we've had. I mean, would you be open to that?
Yeah, I would say reach out to me on LinkedIn. And honestly, if I get enough people that are interested, I'll create a free resource. So not even the coaching aspect of it. It's really about like, what's a free resource that would be valuable to people? I'm more interested probably in that. And because it's something that I think every family should have, and there should be no gatekeeping in the process. So I think that it's something, again, no matter socioeconomic agnostic. I got the benefits of getting to experience it with really wealthy families, but it is really relevant to any family at any socioeconomic status.
I mean, really, these things that you talked about will work for any family.
Exactly.
And any, place that you're in as far as money goes. But, and so, Jena Dunay, Dunay. So if you guys want to reach out to her on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's the place to find me.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that we ask our guests that no one else knows. So what's one thing that you're really passionate about? Well, we know this.
Yes.
But something different that no one else knows about you that you think would be fun to share.
Yes. So very, very few people know this about me in my like post high school life is I actually was did musicals all throughout growing up and actually got a voice scholarship to sing at college while also pursuing a business degree. And so I was a vocalist for many years, did a lot of like opera related, classical related, musical theater related music. Now live in the city of music, which is Nashville. And I have not sung once in public since moving here because everybody is so good. So that is on my long-term bucket list of facing fears. But yes, I was pretty decent, I would say, back in the day. So
good for you.
Yeah, fun fact.
So when you sing in the shower, nobody yells, stop.
No, nobody yells, but I usually am internally yelling at myself like, you hit that note wrong.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Any place we can listen to you somewhere? Are there any archives?
Nope. On any of my greatest hit CDs. Yeah, any of my greatest hit stuff is on a CD that is locked away in my studio right now. It is not to see the light of day.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is pretty cool. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jena. It was great talking with you. I have my pad of paper right here, and I'm going to be writing down stuff. And I'm going to go talk to my kids and my husband tonight. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Erin. This is so much fun.
So interesting. Thanks again. Thanks again for listening to the Office Latte podcast. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at Executive Resumes, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Office Latte Podcast. If you have any career questions or conversations you want us to talk about, send them to officelattepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll answer them in an upcoming show. Have a great week and stay caffeinated.